David Brewster here on the Brewster's Millions of Rants, and this is Warm It Up. And this lesson is going to feature a lot of exercises and warm-ups and workouts. It's going to help you build some strength and finger independence and dexterity and just overall, improve your technique on the guitar. And these warm-ups and exercises, it's an area that I fell into a long time ago, and I really discovered, I liked working on, exercises and workouts and warm-ups. Aside from songs and licks and things like that, it is something you can do when you're just kind of sitting around, maybe watching a movie on TV, and you can unplug and sit there and practice, scales and exercises and your technique, silently. But this lesson is going to be amplified so you can actually hear, what these exercises sound like. And each one's going to target kind of a different area of your technique. So here we go. So if you dive into this lesson and you like, working on these exercises and warm-ups, I did put together an entire instructional method, and I released it last year. It's available on Patreon and only for, late night lesson supporters. But for $5 a month, you unlock, Fretboard Fitness, and you also gain access to almost 200, PDF and guitar profiles that go along, with lessons on this channel. But Fretboard Fitness just attacks, technique and, building your technique and dexterity and strength and speed and everything. So that's what that method, literally attacks. And the exercises in this lesson aren't, from Fretboard Fitness. These are separate. But definitely, if you want to dive a little bit deeper, check out Fretboard Fitness. The exercises and warm-ups in this lesson are going to revolve around the key of G major, or G Ionian, is the modal name. But here's an image with the layout of G major so you can see what notes we have and what we're going to be using. The first exercise is known as the G major stretch, and it's chord-based. It also has kind of a classical, kind of flavor to it, in a way. But it's something like this. It's very basic, and you're going to go very slow, like this. Ascending, and then you can descend. Something like that. So I'm going to go even slower to demonstrate this, but we're working on barring. You're also working on, just kind of, spreading your fingers out and fanning your hand open. You're working on stretching and fretting, and it's just a good, kind of low impact exercise just to get the ball rolling. Sometimes when I first pick up my guitar, that's what I'll play. It also sounds great on acoustic guitar too. It's a good way to warm up, the bigger strings, kind of wrapping your hands, and arms around that acoustic guitar, and then when you pick up an electric, it's going to feel even easier. Just something to think about. We go even slower, you can actually see what's happening with that exercise. We're going to start with this bar on the 3rd fret on the B and the high E, and then you're going to ascend G, A, B, like this. So I'm strumming that partial chord and then picking those individual notes after it. Something like that. And then you're going to move like this, and you're going to descend the C, B, A. And you're still barring that 5th fret right there. And then you want to shift up again, and then you're going to grab this B, C, D. Shift up again and grab, E, D, C, descending. Shift up again and grab D, E, and F sharp. And then right there, you shifted to the 12th fret and you grab G, F sharp, and E. And then right here, you're going to do this shape. And there you're grabbing that F sharp, G, and A. And right there, I just end on G major, which is technically a G over D, because I'm playing that D string in there too. But that gives that kind of an ending right there. And then you can descend like this. You can go way up here. And right there you're grabbing that B, A, and G on the high E. Then you're repeating this shape. And then you're going to repeat this shape. And then that one. Finally get all the way down there. You're going to mimic the the shape we had right here, but you're an octave lower, so it's stretchier and a lot harder to play right there. And then I just end on G major right there, like a G over D. So that's a really good, just easy, simple exercise. It's also melodic, it, fits in the key of G major, and it's just a good place to start, a good basic warm-up. You're not worried about shredding or playing really fast. You're worried about, barring those strings, making a solid connection with both hands, stretching, position shifting, and just kind of warming up your hands. Okay, I'm going to run through this one more time, just kind of walking through it, just a very moderate tempo. I'm not worried about playing it fast or impressing somebody. I'm just trying to warm up my hands and get my fingers and hands acclimated to the guitar, technically. So something like this. Next up is a scale sequencing exercise in G major or G Ionian, and we're going to start a lot higher on the fretboard and move our way down this 3-note per string, very common in G major scale. But the way I'm playing this is a little bit different. The first note of every 6-note grouping is going to be held and played with vibrato. So you can think of that first note of every 6-note group as a dotted 8th note, and then there's 5 16th notes after that. So it's groups of 6, but the first note of every 6-note grouping is sustained or held, and that kind of forces you not to shred, because you can't just fly through this, because every 6 notes you have to add a little bit of vibrato, something like this. Time a little bit slower, and you can see we're just hanging on this first G note and then walking down 5 notes of G major after that, and then grab F sharp and do the same thing, and then you're going to go down 5 more notes and then grab E and do the same thing, and then D, C, D, A, G, and just keep going. This exercise because it forces you not to shred, for one thing. You can't really just fly through that because you have to stop and add a little bit of vibrato on the way down. It also makes you think. It forces you to think, and exercises and workouts that force you to think while you're playing through it are great exercises, because you have to remember, what note you just played, what note you're playing next, what note are you adding the vibrato to. So it really does. It's a big challenge, all the way down. Ascending too. I think I just screwed that up in there somewhere, but something like that. The next exercise I've had around for a long time, and I play this constantly. I use it a lot as a warm-up, but it's a major 7 arpeggio, and there's a couple different ways we can approach this or play it. But let's just stay in G major for now. There's G major 7 a chord. So what we're going to do is play a G major 7 arpeggio right here. There's your G, B, D, F sharp. There's G, B, D, F sharp. But there's a very specific fingering we're using, and this is going to help you with finger independence and build, some strength and dexterity in your hand. So we're starting with the middle finger there on G and doing that fingering right there for that B and D note. I also do a position shift right there, and then I shift up for that B and D note, go to the index and pinky, and then I'm using my third and pinky on that F sharp and G on the top. Like that. So there's G major 7, right? So let's relocate that all the way down to C major 7. You know, and see how you can kind of recycle that fingering, you know, to locate another key. And there's C major 7 right there. Using that same fingering we had for G. Now we can also find C major 7 right here on the low E string. Just kind of a modified fingering of that. And that's going to help you kind of see how you can navigate the fretboard, because there was G major 7 here. There was C major 7 right here. There's C major 7 again. So that means G major 7 lives right there again. The next exercise uses that major arpeggio, but now what we're going to do is move it through the circle of fifths. And I've had lots of students ask me about the circle of fifths and key signatures and the order of sharps and flats, you know, in certain keys. And it's confusing. It's definitely something you have to memorize and work with and study and read and ask questions and stuff like that. And then you basically acquire that information, or you gain that knowledge. But here's an image with the circle of fifths just to help you kind of see this. And what we're going to do is we're going to start at C major, which is like in that 12 o'clock position, and then we're going to move around the circle in a clockwise, you know, fashion, and move from C to G to D to A and so on. But notice this, you know, kind of order of notes that we're going to maneuver through in the circle of fifths right here. To help you see that cycle and the notes that we're going to use in this exercise, let's just convert the arpeggios back to chords and then move through so you can see the progression, and then we can revert them back to arpeggios for the exercise. So we're going to start with C major 7, you know, the chord right here, and then that's going to move to G major 7, and then D major 7 to A major 7, E major 7, B major 7, F sharp major 7, which is the first sharp, and then right there we're going to flip to the first flat, which is going to be D flat major 7. You could also think of that as C sharp major 7 right there. But we're going to flip that to, you know, the flat. So there's D flat major 7, and then A flat major 7, E flat major 7, B flat major 7, F major 7, and then we're going to end with C major 7 again. You know, right there. So we just basically moved up. You know, using chords right there. But then if we convert those back to arpeggios, we have this really interesting exercise that's moving you through positions. And we're going to do this. As you can see, I just moved through that progression using the arpeggio instead of the chords, but there was C major 7. And right there I ended on that B note, which is the major 7 of C. But that B note is also the major third of G, which is the next arpeggio. So it's kind of cool the way it sets up the next, chord in the progression, because there's C major, or C major 7. And then right there you're going to start G. And right there for G major 7, that F sharp is the major 7, but it's also the major third of the next chord, which is D. C sharp, is moving to A right there. G sharp moving to E major. D sharp moving to B major. There's that A sharp moving to F sharp major. And then you can think of that F natural moving to that D flat major right there. A flat major right there, but you're also thinking of that C note. Up there. There we go. But I like the way that the arpeggios are all kind of connected. When you're moving from one to the next one, there's a kind of a mutually shared note, and that you can kind of hear that with your ear, even though you may not really pick out exactly what's going on. You can hear the way that exercise kind of flows. The last exercise here is a string skipping idea using major 7 arpeggios, and I'm a really big fan of this particular arpeggio. And it's definitely moving into some more technical, ideas, because we're string skipping. We're not really playing a chord, we're not really playing a scale, we're not really moving through arpeggios like we did in that previous exercise. This one's definitely more demanding. So if you think of G major 7, we're going to put it right here. So there's your G, B, there's F sharp and G, there's D and F sharp right there. So we're skipping and literally skipping over the D string and the B string for this arpeggio fingering. Now the interesting thing here is we're starting on the root and ending on the major 7. So that means that F sharp is 1 fret away from G, right? And then moving back down, that G is 1 fret away from F sharp. So what I like to do is you can practice, just the simple, arpeggio like this. And it has a very interesting sound just like that. What we're going to do is slide the top and the bottom like this. And then start it again. I like that because we're, exerting a little bit of extra, movement with the pinky and also the index finger. We're string skipping, and it has a very interesting sound too. Now what we're going to do is, that's G. Let's start on C, and then we're going to move counterclockwise on the circle of fifths. So we're going to start with C major 7 right here. And that's the same fingering that we just had in G. Down a set of strings and down 2 frets to start on C right there, but it's the same thing. There's your C, E, B, C, and then this G and B on top. And then you can slide the top and the bottom once again. It sounds cool. But we're doing this. Right there after C, you want to move to F major 7. And then B flat major 7. And then E flat major 7. And then A flat major 7. And then D flat major 7 right there. And then G flat major 7. And then B major 7. I'm a big fan of this exercise because it actually sounds musical and melodic, and it's moving, in a musical way. Unlike, some of the chromatic-based, almost carnival-sounding exercises, like these, which these are good exercises. just don't sound like anything. It just sounds like a bunch of notes. So with something like this, though, you know, it has more of a musical kind of flow or melodic sound. You know, really interesting flow to it too. It just sounds like something you might hear a guitarist play, but it's a great exercise. I'm just going to wrap this episode of Brewster's Millions of Rants with Warm It Up. And I don't know what it is, but exercises and workouts and warm-ups and all these things that you find guitarists, you know, playing, whether it comes from rock and metal or jazz or classical or country or blues or whatever style it is, there are exercises and workouts and warm-ups like this all over the place. You know, it might just be a couple licks or some, you know, tricky fingering, you know, ideas or whatever. But then certain guitarists, you know, Steve Vai and Satriani and John Petrucci and all these great players, you know, Steve Morse and all these players, they've released, you know, workouts and warm-ups and exercises, and it's appeared in books and instructional videos and guitar magazines, websites, you know, definitely on the internet too. So there's tons of them, and I've practiced, you know, hundreds of different, you know, variations and versions of these exercises, and I love it. And anytime I find a new one, or maybe I'm looking through an old magazine or a new magazine and I stumble upon an exercise or a warm-up or something, it's like, hey, and I'll sit and practice it and see what it is. So I seek these out. You know, and some players, they may only know like one or two warm-ups. I've worked on hundreds of them, you know, and I kind of rotate them too. So anytime I start to feel a little stale with one warm-up, I'll move over to another one or shift to a different one, and it changes things up. It challenges me, which is exactly what you should be doing with your guitar, you know, when you practice. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to my lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.